Hello, Professor. I hope this video finds you well. This is my first time using Screenomatic, so I'm hoping you're seeing what you're supposed to be seeing. Looks like I'm seeing what I'm supposed to be seeing. So I'm going to go ahead and just dive right in. This week we went over Piaget's cognitive development theory in ZPD. So Piaget came up with this cognitive development theory pretty much because he recognized that children do not think like adults. And historically, people just believed they were because they were young and they didn't have the intelligence that adults had. However, Piaget realized that children still have their own stages of learning. So let's go ahead and look at these. So Piaget breaks it down into 4 stages of cognitive development. The first is the sensor motorship stage, which happens from birth to 2 years old. This is where the child is learning key elements that they are in need of. So looking, touching, sucking are going to be examples of this, and they are going to achieve object permanence within this stage. So what that means is that if an adult placed a toy under a blanket, the child would be able to recognize that the object is still there and it's not hidden. So the second phase or stage is pre-operational, which this is where the child begins to think symbolically. And a good example of this is a child putting their hands up horizontally and running around the room, acting as if they are an airplane. This is where children begin to use make-believe play a lot more because they can actually connect concepts together, not logically, but airplane, child running around, arms out horizontally, they can connect these two thoughts. The third is concrete operational stage, which happens from 7 to 11. Piaget noted this as the most important stage due to the amount of logical and operational thought that begins to happen within this group. One example that I liked for this stage is if you put 3 cups in front of a student or a child and put the same amount of liquid into each cup, the child would be able to recognize that the liquid amount is not changing even though the cup sizes are all different. Where in the previous stage, children wouldn't be able to understand that logical connection. So the fourth one is formal operational stage, which happens from 11 to adolescent, even into adulthood. This is where one is able to start thinking about things abstractly and logically test hypothesis. I thought a good way to also note this stage is thinking that a student is able to reference multiple point of views when making decisions versus just themselves, where in pre-operational and even in concrete operational, they are more egocentric, thinking about themselves, and in this final 4th stage, you actually are able to think outside the box a lot more. So very interesting 4 stages. I thought Piaget also to note that when he created this, he did not put age groups into each stage. He just thought that this was a series of sequence that they should be following along on. It's not technically for each age group. That has just happened, has come about. So next we're going to go over discovery learning, which was also a part of Piaget's thoughts. This is the idea that children learn best through doing and actively exploring. So that's pretty self-explanatory, but children learn best when they are discovering new things. Other few key concepts that Piaget went over. Number 1 is going to be schemas. So a schema is pretty much the basic building blocks of intelligence. So the best way I can go over this and help me understand it is that These building blocks help people organize knowledge of their world and how to perceive certain things. So a schema example would be that a child recognizes that a cat has 4 legs and is fluffy. So anytime maybe they see a 4-legged animal that's fluffy, they're going to call it a cat. So this is a schema that has learned. And now assimilation is using an existing schema to help or deal with a new object or situation. So an assimilation example would be if a child was to go to the zoo and see a 4-legged bear cub and call it a kitty. The adult in this situation would then tell the child that although yes, they have 4 legs and are hairy just as a kitty, this is called a bear cub. And assimilation then would have taken place. The third key concept also that Piaget went over was accommodation. So this is when an existing schema does not work and needs to be changed to deal with a new object. So this is again then, now he's going to go to the zoo again, the child, and he'll see a different animal with 4 legs and hairy, and will understand that it is not just a kitty. So they've accommodated their original schema to understand it better. The fourth option that he went over was equilibration. So this is one I thought was interesting because this is where students try to make a balance between assimilation and accommodation. So once a child has understood both of those things, that's where they go into a state of equilibrium. And that is where your schemas that you already know are capable of perceiving and understanding things that you come across throughout your life. So that is what you want for children. However, we do also have disequilibrium, which we'll go over in just a bit. So next, we go over zone of proximal development, which this is Lev Vygotsky, I hope I got that right, his theory. And again, I wish I could move this down, maybe it will, it's not like, oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, you probably can't see that. Let's see, here we go. Okay, so the zone of proximal development is pretty much a way to test what students know and what they are capable of with help and what students are not capable of with help. I thought it was interesting to look at it as in a circle because this is students knowing, the outer circle is what students can do with help, and then the bigger circle is what students cannot do. So, key concepts within this, the first one is scaffolding. So this is actually a similar term to ZPD, which is now being used in schools. So you might hear scaffolding more over ZPD. And a scaffolding is just where the teacher, parent, guardian, whoever, gives the student an assistance, and they use that until they can achieve the task then on their own. So a scaffolding could be when you give a puzzle to a child and the teacher helps them figure out, what the image looks like, maybe different colors of the patterns, but allows the student to do it on their own and just helps facilitate. Which leads us to the more knowledgeable other. So this is defined as the appropriate support at the right moments to achieve tasks that would otherwise be too difficult. And I think this is cool because the more knowledgeable other does not always have to be the teacher or guardian. It can actually be a student or a peer to the student who maybe understands something a bit better. So that kind of comes into knowledge through social interaction. Some knowledge is going to be developed over time within students just because of their interaction with other students. So it's very important that students get social interaction so that they can learn from one another beside learning from their teacher, their guardian, or their parent. Which then leads us to two different types of teaching ways, which the first one, which kind of ties in, is collaborative learning. So this is where group members provide different ability levels. So a more advanced peer would be placed with a less advanced peer, and they could work together collectively to figure out the solution. The other is reciprocal teaching, which is used to improve students' ability to learn from a text. And there is 4 main concepts with reciprocal teaching, which are going to be to summarize, question, clarify, and predict. So these 4 are going to be obviously introduced to learners who are a bit more advanced and are understanding how to implement these 4 tactics when reading a text. So altogether, the only other one I forgot to go over was effective scaffolding. And just a few main concepts are gaining and maintaining interest for your student, making the task simple enough so that they don't get frustrated, which leads to also making sure you can control the frustration of your student. And the 4th is emphasis on aspects that help. So giving that direction that will lead the student to success is very important. And the 5th one is demonstrating the task. So it's very helpful for the student if you're able to show them first-handedly how something is supposed to be done or how you expect them to complete it. And all of those ways are going to lead to hopefully a less stressful learning environment. So altogether, that is pretty much the main concepts of cognitive development theory. Again, pretty much just your main building blocks of how children is going through mental development. And the 4 stages are very key and important to this theory. And I hope I went over everything and can't wait to learn some more next week.